In a quiet town, a boy named Uche, a 19-year-old college freshman from a wealthy family, arrived at university with dreams and ambition. Coming from a rich background, he was well known and respected. But soon after arriving, Uche found himself attracted to a mysterious group of older boys on campus who seemed to wield a certain power and influence. They were part of a secret cult, and before long, Uche was drawn in, pressured into joining, and forced through a terrifying initiation ritual. One night, Uche and his group learned of a local tale. A wealthy woman had been buried with a casket filled with gold and treasures. Tempted by the promise of riches, they decided to steal the casket. Under cover of darkness, they unearthed the grave, taking the gold and even selling some of the pieces to foreigners. But just days after the grave robbery, strange and frightening things began to happen. Uche began having nightmares, visions of the woman demanding her treasures back, her face twisted in anger. His friends reported seeing her spirit too, feeling an icy chill wherever they went. Desperate for help, they consulted a local ritualist who told them they had only 7 days to retrieve every piece of gold they'd taken, or the woman's curse would kill them all. The days flew by, and the boys searched frantically for the treasures. But some of the gold had already been sold and was impossible to recover. With each passing day, the curse tightened its grip, the boys fell sick, one by one, their health deteriorating rapidly. Uche, an only child, watched as his life crumbled around him, burdened by guilt and fear. By the end of the week, they were all gravely ill, and one by one, each member of the group succumbed to the curse. Uche's parents were devastated, left to mourn their only son, who had been led astray by greed and a desire for power. And so, the legend of the cursed gold spread through the town, a chilling reminder of the price of greed. Here's how each member of the group faced their tragic end under the vengeful wrath of the ghost. Connor began seeing shadows lurking around every corner, even in broad daylight. Haunted by the spirit, he couldn't sleep or eat. Soon, his mind unraveled, and he was found wandering the streets, murmuring about the woman's wrath, before vanishing one stormy night. Turned, another member tried to escape by fleeing the town. On his way, his car mysteriously burst into flames on the highway. Bystanders claimed they saw a ghostly figure in the flames just before the car exploded. Chidi, the most vocal about the grave robbery, woke up one morning to find his room filled with locusts that seemed to swarm only around him. No matter where he moved, the insects followed, their buzzing an incessant reminder of his actions. He soon fell deathly ill, wasting away in his own homemade, leaving Ton trapped and beyond rescue. Samoa tried to find solace by visiting the local river, but the spirit wasn't done with him. While wading into shallow water, he suddenly felt himself being pulled down. Witnesses reported he seemed to struggle against an invisible force before he was completely submerged, never to resurface. Musa, usually the healthiest of them all, began coughing up blood days after the robbery. His condition worsened, with sores appearing all over his body. Doctors couldn't explain his rapid decline, and within a week, he was bedridden, gasping for breath as his body gave out. During a heavy storm, Sigon took shelter in his family home. Suddenly, the roof collapsed right above him, crushing his leg. Doctors had to amputate, but despite the surgery, he passed away from a severe infection that refused to heal. Jide complained of feeling hands gripping his throat whenever he was alone. Soon, bruises appeared around his neck, and he struggled to breathe. Friends found him gasping for air in his room, his face twisted in terror as he took his final breath. Emeka, once a confident and outspoken leader of the group, started speaking in riddles, his eyes darting around as though he could see things others couldn't. He was eventually restrained and taken to a mental hospital, where he spent his last days in a state of frantic paranoia. Femi woke up one night with a burning pain on his chest. He looked down to find an eerie, hand-shaped burn mark that wouldn't heal. Days later, his entire body was covered in burn scars, as though he'd been touched by something from beyond, and he eventually succumbed to his injuries. Uche, the last to suffer, felt a heavy weight pressing on him wherever he went. Each night, his body weakened until he could barely stand. Finally, he collapsed in his parents' home, his last breath escaping as he saw the spirit's face appear before him, her eyes cold and unforgiving. Or they couldn't escape the strange fires that seemed to follow him. His belongings, even his clothes, caught fire mysteriously, one piece at a time. Terrified and unable to leave his house, he became a prisoner of fear, eventually perishing in his own home as a fire erupted around him, leaving nothing but ashes. Remy's reflection began to change. Each time he looked in the mirror, parts of his face appeared blurred or erased, as though his identity was fading. Eventually, people could barely recognize him, and he grew isolated. The emptiness consumed him until he vanished without a trace, as if he had never existed. Ifoni's hands started to decay, as though they were rotting from the inside out. He felt intense pain but couldn't touch anything without spreading the rot further up his arms. Helpless, he watched as his body decayed, and in his last days, he was covered in sores that no doctor could heal. Every room Ao entered was filled with voices. He heard screams and wails coming from the walls, day and night. The torment drove him mad, and his friends found him clawing at the walls, trying to escape the relentless sounds until his voice was silenced forever. Collot began experiencing phantom injuries that appeared without cause. Bruises, cuts, and even broken bones developed overnight, as if he were being attacked in his sleep. Eventually, his body couldn't take the strain, and he succumbed to injuries that no one had inflicted. Nii was haunted by dreams of sinking into quicksand. One evening, as he walked near an abandoned construction site, the ground gave way, and he was pulled into a pit of mud and sand. No one could reach him in time, and he was swallowed by the earth, just as he'd feared. Bao was plagued by a hollow laughter that echoed in his ears, growing louder each day. The sound haunted him wherever he went, preventing him from thinking or resting. Finally, his mind snapped under the constant laughter, and he died laughing uncontrollably, the eerie sound lingering even after he was gone. Peter felt a constant tightness in his throat, as though invisible hands were strangling him. He could barely breathe and couldn't swallow food or water. Despite his family's attempts to help, he wasted away, slowly suffocating over several agonizing days. Bola was always cold, no matter how many layers he wore or how warm the day was. The chill seemed to seep into his bones, and his body grew weaker. Eventually, he was found frozen, as if he'd succumbed to a winter that only he could feel. Fola woke up one morning with blood-red tears streaming down his face. No matter how many times he wiped them away, they continued to flow, staining his skin and clothes. Eventually, he lost his sight, the blood-tinted tears leaving him blind. Days later, he slipped into unconsciousness, never to wake again. In the end, each of them was consumed by the vengeful spirit, vanishing one by one as punishment for stealing her gold. The tragic fate of each young man stands as a powerful reminder that greed and dishonor can lead to destruction. There are forces in life that should never be disturbed, and respect for the past and its mysteries is vital. Let their story serve as a warning: choose integrity over temptation, for true strength lies in living a life of honor and humility. May we all seek paths that uplift rather than harm, valuing the priceless wealth of peace and respect over fleeting riches. Dear viewer, if you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn notifications button so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.